You're listening to another ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to Industry Thought Leader Podcast. Stand out, be heard, influence. Want to influence real change with your message while become known as an authority in your field? Industry Thought Leader Podcast will show you how. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of Industry Thought Leader Podcast, brought to you by Industry Thought Leader Academy. Stand out, be heard, and influence. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, brand and communication strategist, as well as known as the podcasting queen. So my guest today says, invest the time to discover how your clients talk and what they say, especially to themselves. And joining me on today's show is Eve John, known as the $500 million woman and Australia's golden pen. Eve is the copywriter behind the curtains of some of Australia's most successful and influential brands, products and entrepreneurs. Now, with a developed knowledge of a buyer behaviour and consumer psychology, she helps clients cut through saturated markets. Now, on today's show, Eve is going to share the number one mistake female entrepreneurs are making in their advertising. Go and grab a pen and paper. You're going to want to take down these notes. She's going to talk about the only real motivator behind potential clients' buying decisions, as well as 5 key emotions that you need to focus on so that you can connect with your audience. So welcome to the show, Eve.
Hi, Anne-Marie. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I would imagine that with so many more businesses and individuals, so our potential clients now being online because of what's happening all over the world, what you're talking about today is even more important because there's so many more businesses now recognizing that they, if they haven't already, need to start communicating, building that brand online so that they can engage and connect with their ideal customers. Yes?
Oh, 100%. And I think the changes that we're seeing across the world are really make this a little bit easier for people to understand and see, because the biggest thing that I see for women in business, I'm reviewing sales letters, lead magnets, emails. I'm probably reviewing 15 to 20 pieces of my coaching clients or clients' pieces of copy each week. And what I'm finding is there's a real lack of emotional connection. But now with the changes that we're seeing around the world, it's kind of hard to go on any social media and not see people being really emotional. And quite often they're at one end of the spectrum or at the other about things that are happening, changing how governments and managing what we should do with individuals. So it's a great opportunity to learn and see that people really use and can connect their emotions when they're actually talking to people. And that's something that's really important for business owners to see and understand, because you're not really selling your product. You're selling the feelings, the emotions, and connecting with people in the situation that they're in and how they're going to feel once they've worked with you.
Brilliant. And something that you, as you were talking, I was reminded of, often people are told, well, you need to do this in your marketing and your copy. And what ends up happening is they over, what's the word I'm looking for? Adapt, or they over abuse. I don't know what word, you probably have something. And then it ends up being too in that direct. Does that make sense? So sometimes it's really just kind of bringing it back and really just tapping into where people are at, because you can read copy now and people can see through something that's been fabricated, or they're trying to tap into the emotion. Speak a little bit about that, because there's a balance that we need to get when we're tapping into that emotion, isn't there?
Definitely. I like to think of it as you've got to be able to be vulnerable, but you've got to be credible.
Yes.
As well. And it's all about language. And I often see people that are writing about the struggle. And it's really important to be aware of where your clients are, because if you're focusing on where they're at in the struggle, they can't see the big picture. But if you're going too far to the big picture, they can't connect with you.
Yes.
So it's really important to be able to show people that you understand where they are and be vulnerable, talk to them as in natural language, having a conversation with them. But you also want to be credible. You want to be probably the phrase you use is you want them to see scars, not the open wound.
Yeah. And that's a great analogy, because you do see some people trying to be vulnerable, but it's almost like you think, oh my goodness, that's probably a little bit too much information. But and that kind of then puts people off. They kind of, as they're reading it, or if you're sharing that obviously online through video, podcasting, that kind of thing, it really can be going a little bit too far. Let's talk about the number one mistake that you see many female entrepreneurs are making when it comes to advertising. So just before you dive into that, when you're talking about advertising, I'd imagine a lot of the principles that you are going to share today, we can use just as part of our copy as well if we're creating content or posts on social, yes?
100%. Everything that I focus on and talk about is around languaging. And copy is it's the words that we clients. And really what I'm finding is the biggest mistake that people are having and making, they're saying they understand that they need to connect with their clients, and they understand that they need to build a relationship. But quite often, they're not getting or using words their clients use. So for me as a writer, I can write really anything that needs to sell to women that feel within my demographic. So, 25 to 55, women that have a disposable income, may not be parents, but run this demographic. And there's three little things that I always say to people before you actually write a word of copy. I think what people don't understand for copywriters is that we are expert researchers. So you see that people talking that your girlfriend's meeting a new person, and that you're FBI and checking them out behind the scenes. That's what I do every day. It's stalking brands. And what I find is that quite often people are told that you need to speak to your audience how you in your own natural language. Yes. But the trick to it is to speak to them how in the phrasing that they use, and particularly how they speak to themselves. So the easiest ways to go and do that is to go straight to Amazon, go and have a look at ebooks and books that are within your genre, because I think in business there's so many different types of things that you can see. Go and have a look at the reviews. Now, I'm not talking about the 1-star reviews or the 5-star reviews. I'm talking about the 3-star reviews, because they're the ones that are really, really honest. So I spend a lot of my time and have pages and pages of copy and pasted reviews, and I look for common themes and words. And going and finding those words, going and mining Facebook groups as well is really, really, really important, as well as having a look at your testimonials and other people that are in your industry, looking at the exact words that clients are using. It's quite similar, I think, to being aware of not using too much jargon or technical talk in what you're doing. So Anne-Marie, you and I might be talking, and we might talk about software. So, I'm talking about lead pages and ClickFunnels and Infusionsoft, and you know what I'm talking about. Other people,
I think
it's just not.
They're going on about
100%. So it's really being, but they might use different phrases. And one key thing that I did, I was working with a client in America she works for the department. She's a brain doctor. She's just, I'm scared to talk to her because I think, what does she think of me? But she was using the phrase, when I was a PA. Now, here in Australia, a PA is personal assistant, right? What she meant was physician's assistant, which is basically like a registrar doctor. So they're still, they're still in the learning phase. They are a doctor, but they're still doing some parts of training. And so I just couldn't connect until she said to me, no, I'm not a secretary. It's
careers or something.
It's really important to not make assumptions about the languaging that people are using. Now, people will often say, I go and have a look at what my competitors are doing and what they're saying. Yes, you can do that, but I wouldn't be using that as the be all and the end all, because something that I find is a lot of people that are teaching marketing or, sales funnels and those sorts of things are teaching, yes, you go and do research, but there might be 5 questions.
Yeah.
When I send out a client intake form, there's 47 questions. I don't get my clients to write the answers. I get them to speak them, because you know what it's like. You get people to fill in a document. It's never going to happen, but you let them free flow and let them talk, and they're going to give you the exact language. So that's probably the biggest mistake that people, particularly women, are actually making, is thinking that they just need to use the right languaging, or they can just be speaking in an authentic way that, connects with their audience and being quite emotional. But you have to make it relevant to what's going on inside your ideal clients' heads. You want them to feel like, you've crawled inside their brain, or that they're actually thinking, oh my goodness, it's like she's talking directly to me. And that's the biggest mistake that people make. They go too broad. They use too much, they talk too much often about themselves, but they're not using the languaging or the phrasing or the words that their audience is actually using.
Such an important topic. And one of the things that I believe that many business owners, and especially women business owners, we're talking, and men can use these strategies too.
100%.
However, we do not spend enough time or even realize until they've heard you say how beneficial it is to take time and do that research. I love to also hang out on the comments, of different LinkedIn posts and things like that, because how people respond in the moment is gold. Because you could sit there for years and assume, well, this is what my client says, but go to the source. Would you say
100%.
that we spend enough time on that research component?
I don't see it. And I think what's happening is because quite often, and I know my clients who are exceptionally well known and have really, really strong programs about marketing, they've got a little bit of research, but because they're not doing the copy research themselves, they haven't quite got a grasp in what's actually involved. And I always say to people say to me, what's your one thing you go to, and what's your go-to phrase to look for? And shame's a really powerful emotion. It's a useless emotion. It hurts, but it doesn't really do anything. And when I see the phrase in a Facebook group or on a LinkedIn post that says, I'm really embarrassed to admit this, or somebody says, don't shoot the messenger, I've got a dumb question, you're about to hit gold. So anytime you see that type of phrasing that's a shame related, like I'm really embarrassed, or I probably should already know this, or you guys are probably sick of people asking this question, get your pen out, write your notes, because what they're going to give you is absolute gold to be able to use, because they'll just blur out what's actually really going on inside their mind.
Yeah. And something, as you were just saying, because that is a fantastic prompter, if we're working with clients and we're trying to capture their language, why not start that with a prompt in a questionnaire?
100%. I do it.
Yeah, my embarrassed question that I'm too afraid to ask is this. And
Yes.
let them free flow, and you can really gain some incredible information. And what I love about what you're saying there is, so often I'm sure with your work, a lot of that then is taking the components then and using that, incorporating that into flowing copy that really takes people on a journey. So a lot of times you're not having to think up, well, what words am I using? Something else that I think one of the things that you alluded to is the fact that, when we are speaking to our ideal customers, we can often feel that we need to use this colorful language and sound really fantastic. But again, that's not going to connect. Someone just says, I'm too embarrassed to ask, but is this live? Yes, it absolutely is. Question or a comment that you would like to share or ask Eve, now is your opportunity to do that. And of course, for the people who are listening to the audio version of that, you're missing out. You need to go and hang out on the lives, because then you can to our awesome guests. Let's talk about the only real motivator behind potential clients' buying decisions. What is this?
Well, I'll give you an example of this, and Anne-Marie, it's a little bit funny because of everything with COVID at the moment. It's been a while since I've been to the shopping centre, but as a mum, what we find often is we've all been through that situation where your child's had an absolute meltdown in the shopping centre. Now, I learnt this a very, very long time ago, and this is how we know what the number one motivator is. So your little ones having an absolute meltdown, and you can't get them to calm down, and somebody's quietly whispered to my child, you know that Santa is going to be here soon, and those special lights up there, they're actually Santa's cameras. So you might want to stop before he sees that. And my son just stopped straight away, because the most motivated, the thing that motivates us is self-interest. That old WIIFM, what's in it for me, is really, really important. So there's lots of different things that that we're trying to do when we're trying to encourage or persuade people to do things. It's looking at what's the benefit for them. And quite often that benefit could be a feeling. So I've been doing not out as much at the moment. So I've been watching a fair bit of television. And something that I often notice is if there's a television show that is something that women would tend to enjoy, let's just say for argument's sake, perhaps The Bachelor. What you'll actually find on the advertising around that is quite often there's ads that are charity-based. So ones that are, I don't want to use any name brands, but ones that are, helping children in Africa, or helping children that have low vision or that are poor, that can't afford school fees. And it's very effective marketing, because the self-interest emotion that we're actually feeling there is guilt. And we don't like to feel guilty. There's 5 really powerful emotions that I'll talk about, and guilt's one of them, but we don't like to feel guilty. So to try and get rid of that guilt, and they're tapping into that guilt, but we're trying to get rid of that emotion. And there's a fair bit of discussion around whether people move away from pain more, or into pleasure more, and it tends to be where trying to move away from pain. So it's that sort of phrasing around, we're not interested in we'll do something about our health when we're feeling really sick, but we won't do a lot of preventative work. Yes. is probably even though we know that's in our best self-interest, it makes you uncomfortable. So thinking about when you're creating copy, or when you're talking to clients, because this is it's still using languaging. It's really important to talk about what is in it for them, what is the benefit for them, and that needs to be the real focus, because self-interest is what's going to drive people to do what they want to do. So one of my clients, their self-interest is very, very different to another one of my clients. So being able to read people and knowing what your market is interested in, what do they need to feel, what benefits do they need to have from working with you, is it going to be, self-interest around money? Is it going to be around relationships? Is it going to be around, position and where they are in the market? And it's not always, quite often when I see people, that have created a piece of copy, they're looking at, the financial benefits. This is going to help you make more sales. Well, that's great. But I don't go to work just to go to work. I work so that I can spend time with my children, so that I can live a particular lifestyle that I want, so I can be the canteen mum, so that I can do my charity work. So it's important to think about self-interest for people, and not just the outcome that you're going to give them, but the benefit of the benefit, if that makes sense.
It just makes a lot of sense. And it really then re-emphasizes what you said earlier around, as you're sharing that benefit, please ensure that you use the language that your client is the benefit, because you might say it in a very different way. And again, there's that disconnect. They can't see that, hey, this is actually relevant for me as well. Let's dive into those 5 key emotions. I know that you've mentioned guilt as one. And so what are some of the other ones?
Well, I'll start with the ones that are going to be absolutely no surprise to you. So there's love. Love of another person, relationship love, passion is really important. You've probably heard the phrasing that sex sells, right? It's not so much sex, it's desire, which is really what love is about. It's that wanting, that feeling of desirability, and that falls under the love category. So we can do things because we want people to love us. Unfortunately, not enough of women are doing things to love themselves, which I'm seeing some great programs and great books and everything coming out now about self-love, because I think that is really, really important, particularly for women, because we're always doing things for other people and putting other people first. So love is a really, really powerful emotion. Also fear. Now, some people will say that you've really got to push people's fear. It's powerful and it can work, but I don't want to sit too far in the negative. But I also want to be realistic with people, and it's not so much making them fearful. It's shining a light on what's going to happen if they don't take action. So I think in the COVID normal that we're having, particularly a lot of places now with masks, are they doing it from a fear component of wanting to not get sick themselves or to protect others? So it's really important to think about, you need to be aware of what their fears are, but you need to be able to show them how to transition out of the fear and paint a picture of a better life without, this is what can happen if you don't have this fear anymore. Yeah. This is what's going to happen. And this is what my benefit of working with me is, that we're going to move past or remove this particular fear that you can have. And shame sits with fear.
Okay.
As well. So fear is a great motivator. Shame and I don't get along very well. I'm not a fan of shame. Fear and anger are really great motivators, but fear is one of probably the second most powerful emotion that people have. Funnily enough, the next one's, well, it's probably not funny, but it's greed. And it's not just money. Okay. It's wanting to feel better than somebody else, wanting to have nicer things, wanting to greed. I think they kind of fall, these things kind of fall in with the 7 deadly sins a little bit, but greed around wanting what's rightfully quite often yours. And I think as a society, again, with women, we're taught not to be greedy. You can't have too much, but you don't have, you can't have too much of that, because that's being greedy. And when I'm writing copy for a female market, it will also sell to men. So everything that I'm talking about here is going to work both ways, because women we're dealing with, primal emotions, whereas, women, it's greed might be, we're going to help you get more of this. Whereas for men, it would be like, we're going to crush the competition and take back what's yours. And women are a bit like, oh, no, there's plenty for everybody.
Yeah.
So we're going to share it around. So even in the languaging with writing to the different genders can make a difference, different age groups, different demographics. And it's not just the demographics that we think of. And this is probably something else to have a think about when you're doing your research, is don't just have a look at demographics in regards to kind of like what Facebook can tell you, like where they live, their age, their income, what they do for work, what they do, what TV shows. Have a think of the psychographics as well. And the psychographics are behavioral things. Do they donate to charity? Do they use more of a, mobile compared to desktop? Do they tend to do volunteer work? There's that type of stuff is going deep down to their type A personality of, and are they introverted, extroverted? They're more of your psychographics. But greed can work exceptionally well, but not in that way that we think. You sort of think of greed as big bad greed thing. It's like, well, you've worked really hard. You put the time into the business. It's time to get it back.
Yeah.
So that's the third one. The fourth one, and according to some of my my friends from different nationalities and cultures, there's a lot of different cultures whose mums and grandmas have nailed this one. So to be no surprise, but it's guilt.
Okay. Yes.
So as I sort of talked about before, it's it's a motivator. You'll notice now. Start watching ads particularly on television, and you'll be able to pick which of these emotions that they're actually going for. And there's even you'll start to notice it in not just what people are saying, but facial reactions and even music as well. I may like watching The Bachelor a little bit too much, but you'll see that when there's a villain or when someone's supposed to feel guilty, there's a particular type of music that they have. So quite often they'll push on guilt, and combine guilt and love is very, very powerful when you're dealing with when you're selling to mums, particularly a product for your child. It's like, doesn't your child deserve? That's guilt, and that's love as well. So it's really, really fascinating to watch how you can combine these things. Guilt and fear will combine quite well. It sounds funny when I'm talking about it, but when you understand it in context, it's it's quite interesting. And the final emotion. Do you want to take a guess? What would you say it is, Anne-Marie?
Okay, so you've got love, you've got fear, you've got greed, you've got guilt, and you said shame is in kind of lumped with fear or within.
Yeah, shame's in with fear. Yeah.
Well, we've got some real kind of negative emotion. Well, actually, the love not so much. So, would it be more of a positive one?
Yeah, it's pride.
Yeah. Well,
and pride can go sort of either way.
Yeah.
It's being proud, probably being proud of yourself. And I have to admit, Anne-Marie, this is something that most women are terrible at. So I'll give you an example. I had a client of mine who is going out and doing, she's written a particular book around men and women that are separated and are parenting separately. And she said to me, oh, I don't know if I've got enough experience. She had a qualification in counselling, but she thought, oh, perhaps it's not a university qualification. So she felt a little bit inadequate. And she said to me, I don't think that I know enough, or I don't have enough expertise. And I said, okay. So I'd gone through and I'd read through all of her testimonials, and I knew all of her bits and pieces. And I said, so you worked in the prison system? And she said, yeah, I worked in a particular men's prison for 6 years, counselling men who, because they're in prison, don't have access to their children, and either can or can't because of parenting or decisions and those sorts of things. And so I made her sit down and work out. She'd worked in the prison system for 6 years, doing, average 40-hour weeks, right? So 6 years, and I said, how many clients do you think you would have had in a week? And she said, well, I'd have, I'd at least 6 a week. So we sort of did the figures and extrapolated, and I'm not a numbers person, but we worked out that she'd helped over 1,000 minimum. Hand on heart, could stand up in court and say, I've helped over 1,000 men who were in exceptionally vulnerable positions for whatever reason, to be able to work through their relationships and their parenting and the guilt and the things that come with that. And I said, and you're going to tell me that you don't think that you don't have enough experience.
Wow.
And it was really awakening for her to realize the impact that she'd made on so many people's lives. And this is something that I constantly have to do with so many. I think this is probably one of the psychographics of my clients is they come to me and they know they're damn good. Quite often they're really good, but they're not so good at telling people about it. But there's something there that makes them feel a little bit inadequate. But once we can get them to feel proud of what they've achieved and proud of what they've helped people create and the transformations that they've given people either in their business or in their life, we start to work towards that. And pride is something that helps you, if you're going for like the vision, this is what's going to happen to you. This is what can happen if we work together, building in that pride. And I'm sure, Anne-Marie, you've had people that have come to you and said, oh, don't look at my website. Don't look at my website though, because it's not real. It's not really good.
And I would really call that self-confidence, self-belief. The value that someone offers, because so many people don't recognize, especially women. We do that really well, don't we?
Oh.
Like the example you gave with your client. I mean, having, if we calculated it out with all of that experience, and yet she feels inadequate. Which is amazing. And so then using all of those, when you let's, I know, because I know that we've already nearly at the half an hour mark, but I want to just kind of wrap this up. When you're looking at those different, I've written them down: love, fear, greed, guilt, and pride. So when you're looking at perhaps writing maybe a sales page or piece of copy, do you look at, okay, well, what are for that ideal client, what are some of the psychographics that particular person is feeling? And then you weave them in. So what we're not saying is you have to use all of those emotions in your copy, because then you might be a little bit, Yes.
No, definitely. And the way that I choose them is that I actually will, once I've gone through and done the research, I'll have a look at what the predominant emotions that the research is telling me. People are feeling this. So I'll tend to, it is a personal choice, and everybody makes a difference. And I think that the reason that a lot of clients tend to want to work with me is because I like to paint a picture. I like to tell a story and paint a positive picture. I don't believe in high pressure selling. So I won't ever write a sales piece that it's just like, and if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. That's just not my style. It works across some industries, but it's not. It's, I pick and choose my clients, and I think I attract more people that are like, I just want people to do the good thing that's going to be really, really good for them. So I tend to focus on love predominantly, pride, a little bit of greed, but with the focus on you deserve this.
Yeah.
And you're not being greedy, because what we actually find, I do a lot of volunteer work, particularly in very micro startup for women that are at a financially disadvantaged or have been through trauma. And what we find and what the numbers actually show us across even to, multi-million dollar businesses, Canva, Spanx, women-led businesses, is that women will put money back into their community and reinvest it. So I will always say to my clients, I'm going to put in here around you're not around the greed aspect, because I heard a phrase once that a mentor said to me, and it was, the best way that you can help the poor is by not being one of them. Now, because of what I do, I'm able to give to certain foundations and charities and those sorts of things as you do. So, but if I don't have an income coming in or my business isn't doing very well, then the amount that I can give away drops. So does that really sit with greed though? Yes, it does. But
I would think more to think of it more, Eve, and I think especially with women, and again, it's more from that abundance mindset, isn't it?
100%.
You've got abundance, and I think when you look at it through the abundance mindset, you know that by increasing your income, you're then able to support others as well, because you'll be able to increase the support. For sure. And I think we're almost getting to the stage now with the anxiety and with the uncertainty around the world, that because of what we've experienced, and we here in Melbourne are still kind of, I can't remember the last time I went out to the shops either. I am an introvert, so for me, I'm kind of, I don't mind if other people go out and do some peopling for me. But I think gone are the days where we can really, that negative push. I think you call it bro marketing. I've heard that term thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
I think gone are the days, especially when you see a lot more women now leading, companies and so forth. We see right through that. And many women, I'm sure your clients too, Eve, there is a vision and a mission to what they're doing. They want to impact the world. There's a different kind of culture coming through from these women leading, their organizations, and it's quite different. Would you say that?
Oh, I would agree 100%, Anne-Marie. And I'll tell you something. I've never spoken about this publicly before, but I'll tell you something that I do. On days that, we all have days that are a little bit more emotional, or, we're perhaps a little bit more hormonal. So on any days that I'm a little bit more hormonal and feeling a bit flat and, you're just like, oh, why am I bothering? I'll actually go through and look at the last 6 months worth of my clients and go and have a look at their Facebook page, or their videos or things that I've worked on them with, and read the reviews and feedback. Because what it does for me is it reminds me that by helping them do what they do, I get them out there, and then that's changed this life, or it's changed that life. For example, my son wanted to do 3D printing. And I thought, hang on a minute, 2 years ago in an organization that I was doing some volunteer work, there was a lady that, was doing an engineering and wanted to start a robotics class online. So I looked at her, and I remember helping her with the business plan. So I remember the business name, and I looked her up. She's won an award for and been featured in the Australian Woman's Weekly. She's done all of these amazing, amazing things. And now every Thursday, he works with one of her staff to do this 3D program. And I sort of sit there and think, I feel that I contributed to her getting that business off the ground, which has now helped my son do this 3D drawing program that he wants to do, which he just wants to go and work for his uncle because he heard there's good money in that program, AutoCAD design. I think that's where he's going with it all. But it's quite often, I'll go and read through these things, and quite often it's transformations. Or I worked years ago with a fertility coach, and she had a medical background, and now her business is thriving, and there's all these pictures of babies, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got to at least claim one of them.
Yeah,
they won't let you keep them, but you know what I mean.
World.
But I really agree, and I think that's one of the reasons that I choose to work predominantly with women, is that I know that women will do it because we're passionate about it. We want to make a difference, and it is really that ripple effect as well. You know, you affect somebody who then affects somebody who then affects somebody who then affects somebody. And it, I do believe that in business karma, it all comes back, and I see things and I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. How did you manage that? And I say, well, I got this product and I'll be like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'll write the sales copy for that. You know, so it's really fascinating to see. But yeah, the being able to understand what's going on in your clients, you know, what's her day like, what's she feeling, what is she saying to herself, getting inside their brain. And it does come, you don't have to be a world-class copywriter to be able to make, you know, your marketing pop. You do need to spend the time on research, though. That's, if somebody said to me, do I hone my my writing skills or my researching skills? And I'm like, I could write cold with nothing, right, for a particular audience. But for everybody else, it is about because I've spent thousands and thousands of hours researching it, you know, in quite similar industries. But for everybody else, spend the time on the research, because it will give you the answers that you need.
Brilliant. So Eve, will give you an opportunity to share how people can connect with you, but we've got someone on LinkedIn, the user on LinkedIn, it says, LinkedIn user, amazing what happens when we reflect on the good in order to help us stop dwelling on the bad. So yeah. Eve, how can people find out more about you, your work? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can go to my website, which is evejohn.com.au. I've actually just published a new book, How to Get into the Heads, Hearts and Purses of Your Female Clients so they buy now, and you'll see a link there. And it's a great, if nothing else, it's a really, really good example of using all of the 5 emotions in there. It's an example of looking at self-interest as well. So that's available there. It's also available on Amazon as well. But there's, I'm like you, Anne-Marie, I'm a marketer and a copywriter, so there's got to be some bonuses on that sales page, right?
That's right. If nothing else, go and check out the sales page, and you'll probably end up going, oh, I need this. So put it in your I mean, like, seriously, I mean, you could have the best product and service to be able to transform the lives of your ideal customer. But if they don't know that, because the way that you're communicating that is just not connecting, or, you know, showcasing a promise of expectation, and compelling them to go, you know what, I think this person has what I need. They're just not going to do anything. And then what ends up happening for many of us women who are, as we said, vision and mission driven, we take it upon ourselves, don't we? Think, well, it must be reflecting on what I'm doing, which it's not. It's just that your copy's no good. You need to go and hire and work with Eve.
Can't sell a secret, Anne-Marie, can you?
Exactly. Someone has said, welcome, Amber, welcome. I found you online and thrilled to have watched you ladies tonight from the USA. Well, welcome, Amber. And please go and connect with Eve after today's show too. So thanks once again for coming on the show, Eve.
My pleasure. Great to see you.
When we're allowed out of our homes, we'll have to connect face to face as well. So
definitely, that'd be great.
All the best. Bye for now.
Bye.